Hi everyone, it's Tom from Heritage Blades here. I just thought I'd share with you one of the processes of when I'm working on laminated iron knives. So some of you may have seen, I posted up about making these Iron Age knives, so replicas of knives from say Cambridgeshire, Danebury Hillfort and Cavan Hillfort as well. These knives are all made out of laminated iron. That's iron which has been folded and folded and folded and layered up to give it strength and toughness basically. Now, unlike steel, carbon steel knives, I can't quench this in water to harden it, and so it begs the question, how do we make the edge hard enough to hold basically a cutting edge? And one of the methods I do is hammer hardening. It's the same process if you were, say, sharpening a scythe or making a tool out of bronze. You would hammer the edges to make it hard. So we've completed one knife. I just thought I'd show you working on another one. So you probably won't be able to see it too well, but we have about 1 millimeter thick edge here. And hammer hardening is the process of hitting that metal, squashing it down in size. And as you squash it in size, it gets harder. Typically the rule is it will increase by hardness. Every millimeter you reduce it by half as hard as it was before. So if it was say 20 Rockwell and we reduced it down by 1 millimeter, it would increase by 10. So it'd be 30 Rockwell. So that's a rough rule as to how it would progress. So for this instance, I've actually hammer hardened the blade. I've been over it and been over it, hammered it while cold after forging to smooth out. I've now buffed and polished this on a Yorkshire sandstone, trying to recreate the kind of grit, the kind of polish they could achieve in the Iron Age in Britain. And now it's all about hardening that cutting edge further. So for this, I'm going to find a nice clean spot on my anvil. I'm going to use a ball peen actually, or a very small square-headed hammer would also be very good. But a ball peen in this case, and I'm really going to be focusing just hitting on that cutting edge. And it is just going about this in a very delicate way. And we're not trying to hammer too heavily, but we're trying to be quite accurate. And keeping these hammer blows as close together as possible. I'm perhaps only hammering in about a few millimeters. I'm not hammering massively onto the blade, I really am just hammering on the cutting edge. Hopefully you can actually see this in the camera. You can see a little bit on here, there we go, where we started hammering. We're barely hammering into that edge at all. We'll do that across the entire length of the blade. And I quite like this process because it's quite therapeutic. It's not very loud. We're just delicately tapping away, reducing the material thickness as we go. And I love this process because it can make the knives really, really tough. I use an iron knife quite frequently, and by modern knife maker standards, that's a material that we would say is pretty soft, and it is compared to carbon steels. Pretty soft. Maybe we would regard it as not making very good knives. However, my iron knife, my laminated iron knife, which I have hammer hardened, I've been using for the past 5 years, 6 years, and I just hammer the edges when it needs hardening and sharpening, occasionally touch a stone to it to bring that edge even finer, but I've done all sorts of work with it. I've butchered deer and sheep, I've dug holes with it, I've carved bone, horn and antler and done woodworking. Basically I've used it for everything I would use a regular carbon steel knife, and I love having an iron knife because very rarely will they actually break. If anything, it will bend, it might distort. It takes a second to correct, so you can just smack it with a rock if you need to, and it'll be straight again. But they will very rarely, if ever, break. And that's the beauty of iron. It's a tough material, it's tough and flexible, whereas some steels can be quite brittle. You can inadvertently snap the tip of your knife off if you're maybe using it for something you shouldn't be, like a screwdriver. But also, were you to knock it against a rock and blunt it by accident, drop it on a stone or something like that while out camping. Carbon steel knives can take an age to resharpen if they're really, really hard. But softer iron knives take seconds to sharpen with, say, a file or a stone. And again, if you have a hammer, you can just very delicately work along that cutting edge. And in theory, never remove any material. The knife will only ever get bigger. So we've done one run, hammered all the way along the cutting edge. It goes wavy, so just using a file, I'm just going to go along now and work that back. And not only does this keep it nice and even as I go along, it actually pulls back some material and we have a bit more thickness there that we can squash down. And essentially what I'm doing here is I'm pulling material from the blade out, material from the body of the knife out into the blade, and that material is getting harder and harder and harder with every run I do until we build it up and we have a really good cutting edge. So a nice quick simple run and then back to hammering. Now there is a side effect of hammer sharpening and hammer hardening like this, and that is over time your knife will begin to curve upwards. Because of course as we're hammering, we're pulling metal out, but also we're spreading it, and it will slowly push your blade round and it will become quite a curved blade. But that will take years and years. The knife I've had for 5 years, I've been doing this too, it's only just starting to become slightly curved. I might need to switch the sheath over, but it's taken a long while for it to get to that point. And what I find most interesting about that is in Iron Age archaeology, in Britain especially, we keep finding these really curved knives. Curved similar to this, but some of them, the tip curves right up to here. Now, the question is, were they making their knives like that? Maybe. But we do find plenty of knives that are quite straight, even some larger sort of cooking knives that are quite straight. And we find similar sized ones where the edge has been curved all the way up into a crescent shape. And that could be signs of years of use and hammer sharpening and hammer hardening going on. After years and years of use, the blade has curved upwards. So those knives may have started off straight and curved over their life. And for someone who makes replicas, that then poses a question. When someone asks me to make an Iron Age knife, do I make it exactly as it is in the archaeology? Or do we think maybe it was straight at the beginning and we want to start from a supposed shape, a more straight shape than the already curved profile? So that's coming on really nicely, and it's getting really, really thin on the cutting edge. If I kept doing this, we could actually get it to the point where it is sharp and ready to use just from hammering. I wouldn't even need to put a stone to it to polish it up and refine the edge. But we're not there yet with this one. He still needs a bit more work. So again, go along. I'm going to level off the edge, remove any parts that have moved out unevenly, and tidy it up. I think for this one, a few more runs and it will be ready. That edge is really now coming down, really nice shape to it. And we'll just have to clean it up afterwards. One of my favourite methods of hardening, very therapeutic, and I find less chances of things going wrong when compared to, say, quenching it in oil or water. So that's a little bit on hammer hardening, and we'll see how these knives turn out.